Karanam Paramanandam Madhavam. Okay, thank you so much for joining. So we ended last week's discussion with the individual themes presenting the 9th chapter. So I'll take some time and give you an overview of the chapter. One of the most important chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. It's right in the middle, considered to be the fulcrum on which the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita rests. And after that, we can do the question and answers, and also prepare for the class next week. So without further ado, let me share my presentation. Okay. Let's see. Share. Okay, so we kind of covered the the earlier part of the chapter, that Krishna introduces this as the most confidential knowledge. It gives direct perception of the self. Pratyaksha avagamam allows one to control Krishna, and is considered confidential because Krishna speaks about his own emotions. So if I may ask in question from the devotees, that what are three prominent ways, there are many ways, but the three prominent ways in which we acquire knowledge? Chaitanya Prabhu?
The senses, through senses, and through the gross senses. And you want me to give all the three, or you want others to?
Okay, let's move on. Let's see, Kokila Mataji.
Prabhu, Guru.
Okay. So there are three ways in which we acquire knowledge. Maybe I'm not putting the question right. So in this, it's described that typically when we go around,
Pratyaksha, right? Pratyaksha, Anumana, and one more thing.
Okay, who's that?
This is Vachanavdas.
Is that Guru and Shastra, Prabhu?
Okay. So raise hands and speak, please. Yes, but the answer is correct. The three ways is Pratyaksh. What is the second way?
Anuman.
Anuman. And the third way?
I forgot.
Shabda.
Okay. And which is considered to be the most superior?
Shabda.
Shabda. Which is considered to be the most inferior?
Pratyaksha.
Okay. So here Krishna is saying that this knowledge will be Pratyaksha Avagamam. Right. So he is making this point that you will get direct perception of the self, and he is calling it the most confidential knowledge, which means that he is delivering something that is superlative, but he's predicating it on something that is considered to be the lowest in terms of knowledge gathering. So would anybody like to volunteer why? What's going on over here? Okay, no worries. So what's going on over here is a principle that Jiva Goswami explains in the Paramatma Sandarbha, that higher than Pratyaksha is Anuman because our senses are defective. Higher than Anuman is Shabda because our intelligence is limited. Shabda is perfect because the source is, if the source is perfect, Shabda is perfect. But then he makes this important point that Shabda has to transform into Pratyaksha. So, for instance, I go to Bhakti Vinod Prabhu and say, Prabhu, you chant Hare Krishna. And he says, why? I say, it's coming from the scripture. So Bhakti Vinod Prabhu he's a nice devotee. He accepts it as descending knowledge. And then he starts chanting. And he says, okay, I'll start chanting. Right? So then I say, okay, when you chant, you will feel the difference. You will see that you're more connected to Krishna, more detached from material connections. And then he goes on chanting. And then at some point, he will expect to experience what is being promised. Otherwise, what is the value of Shabda? If it cannot be validated at some point of time by Pratyaksha. So Krishna so far in the earlier chapters, he has spoken primarily Shabda. And you're not the body or the soul. Arjuna will say, how? He said, because the scriptures are telling you, you work with detachment. Why? Because the scriptures say. So he's mostly speaking Shabda. Now he's closing that loop. He's saying that if you do, or if you acquire this confidential knowledge, you will now start experiencing what I have been promising. You will start experiencing your connection with me. Right? So that is why this is considered to be more confidential or most confidential. And we discussed that non-enviousness was the primary consideration. Now, so let me ask another question, and let's see if we can make a connection of the 9 forms of devotional service, which is considered to be the most potent. Rangamataji?
Shravanam, Prabhuji.
Shravan. Very good. So what does Shravan translate to? It translates to Krishna Katha. Now here, Krishna is talking about non-enviousness. So can anyone help make this connection between Anusya way, between non-enviousness and Krishna Katha? Yes, Chaitanya Prabhu?
I'll make an attempt, Prabhu. I'm not sure if I'm right. To me, it seems like to be submissive to someone, to hear, you need to be submissive. And to be submissive, if you're hearing a greatness about somebody else, you should be humble enough to hear about somebody.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very, very close. Ram Tulsi Mataji. You're on mute.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing too. It's to inquire, so to approach the spiritual master in a humble state of mind. I think of the verse Tadvidi Pranipatena. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita to approach in a humble, to inquire and approach in a humble state of mind.
Okay, very good, very good. Rangamataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. So non-envious means we are not at the center. If we have Krishna at the center, not taking us into consideration, only then we'll be able to be eligible to get that humbleness and hear about him.
Okay, very good point. All are very good points. So let me kind of put them together and summarize. So let's assume that somebody comes to your house and says, I just came from the house of Bhaktadas, and Bhaktadas is such a wonderful kirtan singer, such a wonderful cook, such a wonderful scholar. So when you're hearing this person glorify Bhaktadas, the only situation in which you would appreciate that glorification is if you have a complete lack of envy to Bhaktadas. So it is said that one of the most difficult things for a person is to hear the glorification of somebody else. Why? Because it goes against the basic construct of conditioned life. Material life is based on false ego. False ego means I'm at the center. Somebody else is being glorified, that person is in the center, right? When you go and watch a movie, everybody wants to be the hero or the heroine. Nobody wants to be the extra. Nobody wants to be the villain, right? So you want to be the center. The only problem is that when you're at the center, then that person who occupies the position needs to be eliminated. That's what envy is. So when we listen to Krishna Katha, then the attachment to Krishna Katha is directly predicated on our lack of envy towards Krishna. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this point is made as one of the basis of Bhagavatam. That Krishna Katha is the most potent way of making advancements, because it attracts those who are non-envious of Krishna and it expunges envy from Krishna. So you sit and listen to it once, you listen to it second time, you listen to it third time. And every time you listen, if there is a lack of envy, then the attraction to that pastime increases. So here Krishna is saying, I'm giving you this knowledge because you're non-envious. And Arjun will demonstrate it in the next chapter. So in the 10th chapter, verse 18, he will make this point. He will say that I'm never satiated in hearing about you. Right? Tripti shandata nasti. Tripti means satiated, nasti, never satiated hearing about you. That is the symptom of non-enviousness. Right? So Krishna says that this non-enviousness is important because as long as one is envious of Krishna, their hearts and their minds will never be open. And this is also the reason why the most confidential knowledge is openly given. The curtain is not from Krishna's side. The curtain is from our side. Those who are envious will not get it. And those who are not envious, Krishna is speaking to them. So that is the beauty of Krishna Katha. Now, it's a busy slide. I don't expect you to read it, but I'll send you the presentation. You can read it at your leisure. Krishna now begins to talk about himself. So he first talks about his relationship to the material world. Why does he talk about it? Because he's speaking to us who are in the material world. Right? And here we'll see how the 9th chapter and the 7th chapter, similar constructs. 7th chapter also, Krishna starts speaking about his relationship to the material world. But he goes in the 9th chapter, he goes deeper. So he will give what is known as Aishwarya Gyan. He will give the knowledge of his opulence. And then later on in the chapter, right towards the end of the chapter, he will give Madhurya Gyan. He will give the knowledge of his sweetness. Now, these verses 4 to 9, these verses give what is considered to be one of the crucial philosophical basis of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, which is Achintya Bhed Tattva. And it's a little bit beyond the scope of Bhakti Sastri. You will not be tested on it. But because this is so important, I always make a point to speak about it a little bit. Because this is the unique gift of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is what makes the Gaudiya Vaishnavism complete. So in this, so 10th verse is a summary. Verses 4 to 9, Krishna will make 16 points in which he will illustrate the tattva. He makes 7 points, and in the slide I have the verse references, where he shows that he is attached. He says that I pervade the entire universe, all beings are in me, I maintain all the living entity, I'm present everywhere. So he shows a very close attachment to the material world. He makes 3 points to show that he is detached. Right? In 9.4 he says that I'm not in anything, everything that is created does not rest in me, and not a part of the cosmic manifestation. And then in 6 points, he will explain the contradiction. He says, I contain but do not interfere. By my potency I create, by my will I create, by my will I destroy. And the 10th verse essentially is a summary, a famous verse, Mayadakshena Prakriti Suyati Sucharacharam Hetunanena Kontaya Jagad Vipri Vartate. So here Krishna is demonstrating how does the Achintya Bheda Veda principle work, right? He says that this material world is nature is my energies working in my direction. And it is this material energy that is producing all the moving and non-moving beings, all the manifested, and annihilation is being done. So what is the summary of Achintya Bheda Veda Tattva? That Krishna creates and destroys everything. But he does through his energies. Krishna maintains everything, but he is completely neutral and non-interfering. So essentially the tattva, it defeats impersonalism while also accepting it. Right? So let me explain this a little bit. When Sripad Shankaracharya came, then he propounded the Advaitavad, in which he said that everything is one. Everything is the Supreme, the Brahman. Then the question came that, but we see around ourselves that there are so many distinctions. There are animals and plants, and there is birth and death. So Shankaracharya said that we cannot accept these distinctions as factual because they would impinge on the nature of the Supreme. The Supreme has to be non-changing. If the Supreme changes, then what the Supreme changes into would be the new Supreme. Or maybe it would take away from the first Supreme. So the basis of Advaitavad is that the Lord is unchangeable. But then the material world is changing. So then he reconciled the two by saying that the changes in the material world are illusory. That's what, from their perspective, is Maya. That the changes in the material world are illusory. There is no real basis of that change. So as long as we are subject to the illusion, we will see this distinction between Brahman and everything else. When we become perfect, then the change is in us. We stop seeing this distinction and everything becomes Brahman. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that it denies the existence of the personal form of the Lord. So in order to refute the philosophy of Advaitavad, the various Vaishnavacharyas came and they presented what is known as Dvaitavad. Dvaitavad is two, different. There is spirit and there is matter. So how did they refute it, and how did they reconcile? So they also accepted the fact that the Supreme is unchanging. That Supreme cannot change. If the Supreme changes, then not the Supreme anymore. But the material world is changing because the Supreme Lord is acting on the material world through his energies. So the energies are causing the change, but the Supreme Lord is not changing. Right? So that is the Dvaita. But the energies are only dependent on the Supreme Lord. They don't have an existence separate from the Supreme Lord. That is Advaita. So when you combine these two, then you get the philosophy that was propounded by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that the Bheda Abheda. So Abhed is the non-difference between the Lord and his energies. Like Krishna in this verse says that Maya Dakshena Prakriti, that this energy, this material world is my energy, which means it is fully dependent on Krishna, working under my direction. So that Maya does not have any existence independent of Krishna. But then what does he say? That Hetuna Nena Kanteya Jagat Vipritatva, that it is this material energy that is producing the moving and non-moving things that is causing the creation and annihilation. I'm not creating it. Krishna says, I'm not doing it. It is this Maya energy that is doing it. But this Maya energy is my energy. It is completely under my direction. So both the points are reconciled there. So that was the gift of Mahaprabhu, that he gave us this philosophy that reconciled. It did not reject Advaitavad. It reconciled Advaitavad with the Dvaitavad that was given by, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu primarily took the Dvaitavad from Madhavacharya and Ramanujacharya. So the Dvaitavad that was given by these two Vaishnava gurus, and he was thus able to explain it. So it is a complete solution, right? There's nothing that is left. If you take this, you can apply it to any situation, and you will be able to reconcile it. That the Lord interacts with the material world through his energies. The Lord and his creation is the same, since the energies have no existence without the Lord. The Lord is different because the energies depend on the Lord, but the Lord does not depend on the energy. The Lord is always neutral. And all this existing simultaneously is achintya. It is inconceivable. Also important to understand that Achintya Bheda Bhed Tattva is typically used to reconcile the relationship of Krishna with his external energy. It is also sometimes used to reconcile Krishna's relationship with his marginal energy. Right? So Krishna's relationship with the Jiva, not very common, but philosophers sometimes do use it. That Srila Prabhupada would make the statement all the time that the Jiva is qualitatively the same as Krishna, but quantitatively very minute. So this is simultaneous oneness and difference. Qualitatively, the Jiva is the same, quantitatively different. But Achintya Bhed Tattva is never used for Krishna and his internal energy. So between Krishna and Purushavatars and Vishnu Tattvas, there is no bhed. It's always a bhed. And there's no achintya. It is, Krishna openly says, I expand, this is what I am. I am Lord Vishnu, I am the Purushas, whatever. So there it does not apply. So predominantly it applies in reconciling the Lord's relationship with the material world. And as I said, it can defeat all variant philosophies. Voidism, impersonalism, when they come up with all these objections that how can Krishna, if like people say, how can God exist if there is nobody there to worship God? Which means that the existence of God is predicated on the existence of one who worships God. Right? And by applying Achinta Bheda Bhed, we can understand that yes, the devotees are linked to the Lord through the process of worship, but the Lord is not dependent on the worship of the devotees. In the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam, this point is very, very clearly made, and further detail goes into further details. So this is one thing that I would like you to clearly understand. Like I said, it will not be tested, but since Krishna speaks about it in this chapter, it's important for us to understand it. Okay, now let's move on. In the next section, so this is essentially a summation of the Achinta Bheda Bhed Tattva. In the next section of the verses, Krishna, so again, you remember in the 7th chapter, Krishna talks about the 4 kinds of people who accept him, reject him. Same thing Krishna does here, but he speaks of only one kind of person, Avijanati Ma Mudha, right? So he speaks about the Mudhas here, and he gives the reason also, that why do the Mudhas Avijanati, why don't they know me? And the reason, this is 11th verse, he says is, because they do not know. So what is it that they don't know? They do not know the relationship of Krishna with the Jiva. They do not know Sambandha Gyan. And that is the reason for all the other 3 also, that they lack Sambandha Gyan. Right? Sambandha Gyan has 3 parts in it. Knowledge of Krishna, knowledge of Jiva, and knowledge of the relationship between Krishna and Jiva. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has this very nice book called Das Mula Tattva, in which he explains Sambandha Gyan. But essentially, this is what it is. So those who lack Sambandha Gyan, they will reject Krishna. And then in the next verse, Krishna says, what is the destination for them, right? So he says, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and the culture of knowledge are all defeated. So the point he's making is that, so who hopes for liberation? The yogis. Fruitive activities, karmis. Culture of knowledge, jnanis. So he said, whether the person is practicing karma, jnana, or yoga, if it lacks sambandha jnana, they will all be defeated in their endeavor. Now, Krishna will then contrast this with those who surrenders. Right? The very famous word, Prabhupada's favorite was, Mahatmanastu mam partha devim prakritam ashritaha vajanti ananya manasa kyatva budhatam avyayam. Right? He says that those who are not deluded, means those who have this knowledge, they are under the protection of my divine nature. And he says that they are Mahatmanas. Right? Krishna is so fond of them. He says they are Mahatmanas. In the 7th chapter, he said they are all magnanimous souls. Right? Here he says they are Mahatmanas. Now, how is it that the soul that Krishna had said was Anu, very, very small? He says that Prabhupada says that the tip of the hair, you cut it into 100 pieces, you further cut it into 100 pieces. That's the size of the soul. So how is it that that soul has now become Mahatmanas. Maha means great, because it is now in connection with one who is great. Not that the soul becomes great, but by connection with one that is great. Right? So this is the internal mood of one who surrendered to Krishna. The external mood is again a very famous verse. This chapter has so many wonderful verses. Satatam kirtayanto mam itantasya drudavata namasyantasya mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasatya. They're always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, going on before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So this is how do the Mahatmas act. Internally, the Mahatmas know that Krishna is great. And externally, what do? Krishna Katha, chanting my glories and performing the other angas of Bhakti. So sometimes people, once a devotee was sharing that he had gone preaching and he was speaking like full on about Krishna and material world. And I think the way that he had gotten access to that person was that, do you know about yoga? He said, yeah, I know about yoga. And he said, well, I can tell you about yoga. And then he started talking, and that person after some time said that, I thought that yoga was all about keeping quiet, and you have been speaking non-stop for like 10 minutes. What kind of yogas do you, Hare Krishnas, practice? So then he said that, we practice the yoga of glorifying Krishna. So conventional understanding of yoga is you go into a forest, you be alone, keep quiet, and that is yoga. But this is Bhakti yoga. So so Krishna has spoken about those who surrender, and he has spoken about those who do not surrender. Now he speaks about those who are in between, that they surrender, but not to Krishna, right? So in this verse, he talks about, in the 15th verse, he talks about three people, the Ekatvenas, the Vishwato Mukham, and the Prathatvena. So the Ekatvenas are the Mayavadis. Ekatvena means they think that everybody is the same. Krishna has already criticized them in verse 11 and 12. He's called them Muras. Then the Vishwato Mukham, these are those who worship the universal form of Krishna. And he speaks about these in verses 16 to 19. And then we have the Prathatvena. Prathatvena means Bahuda, many. They worship many, which is the demigod worshippers. He'll speak about them in verses 20 to 25. So this is again a repeat of 7th chapter, but what Krishna shows over here is that even though these persons are not worshipping him, he is still their ultimate benefactor. That those who worship the demigods, he says they're worshipping me, but incorrectly. Because Krishna is empowering them. He says, I give them faith. The benedictions that the demigods give are coming from me. Now one might ask that if Krishna does not like demigod worshippers, why is he encouraging them? Why is he building faith in them? This is where now Krishna is revealing his inner emotions. He is so fond of the jiva. So just like an indulgent father, the child says that I want to eat these sweets. I want to eat these sweets. The father knows it's not good for him. But the child is insisting, and the father says, okay, take it. Just don't cry. Right? The whole material world has been created by Krishna for this reason. That the souls like us in the spiritual world, we started complaining to Krishna. We don't like it over here. We don't like it over here. Krishna says, okay, I'll create the material world. Try and have fun over there. So here Krishna is showing his intense attraction, affection for the jivas. Verse 18 is actually considered to be, if somebody outside asks you, can you give a good definition of who God is? Then verse 18 is a good definition. Krishna says, I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, the most dear friend. I am creation and annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place and the eternal seat. So good comprehensive description of Krishna. So now that Krishna has spoken about his affection to those who are not really affectionate about him, now Krishna is speaking about those who are actually affectionate about him. So now he's speaking about the devotee, right? Ananyas chintayantos mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nitya vayuktanam yogakshema vahamyam. Very, very famous verse. That those who worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. And you see Krishna in this verse is making statements that will become the basis of practicing devotees, right? So he says that those who worship me with exclusive devotion. So that's Krishna's ask. Krishna is wanting exclusivity, right? Sarvam pratyaj. Vyavasatmika ek hai kuruna. Vyavasatmika buddhi ek hai kurunandana, right? So he's saying that I need exclusivity. Then he says always meditating continuously. One should not say that I will worship Krishna on Sundays and Fridays, or I shall only worship Krishna in the morning but not in the evening. Always continuous, without any break. And how do they meditate? He says on my transcendental form, right? So what does that indicate? On me as a person. How does Krishna reciprocate? Yogakshema vahamyam. So you probably all have heard about the pastime of Arjun Pandit. That I'll go very briefly through it. It's a sweet pastime. The Arjuna Acharya, he was writing this commentary, a very exalted devotee, he's writing this commentary on Gita. He came across this verse, and then he saw Yogakshema Vahamya. So Vahamya means that Krishna is saying that I'm personally carrying what the devotees lack. So he said, how can the devotee expect Krishna to become a servant? That if you have like 3 bags and 2 bags you carry, and then you call the servants, they carry the 3rd bag from me. So he said there is something wrong. So he replaced Vahamya with Karomi, like Yogakshema Karomi. Karomi means that I will get somebody to do it. So Krishna has so many representatives. It means that I recognize I will help, but somebody to do it. So he scratched out Vahamya, put Karomi, went to take a bath. In the meantime, 2 young boys came, one dark and one fair colored. And can guess Krishna Balram, they carried a lot of gifts, food items for the wife, and she was very happy. She said, where did you come from? And she was instantly attracted for obvious reasons. She said, no, we just came because your husband has sent this. And then she said, okay, I'll cook, you sit down and eat. And that's what mothers do. Children come, they want them to feed. She said, no, we can't eat. Your husband will beat us. So she said, what are you talking about? My husband is the most gentle soul. How can he beat? He said, no, he beats us. You can see. And they showed their back, and they had like marks on the back. So they went away. And then Arjuna Acharya comes, and now the wife is really upset at her husband. So she's not even talking to him. So she says, what's going on? He said, why are you beating kids? So he says, I never beat kids. He says, no, this is what happened. She explained the whole thing. So he understood what happened. So he went and looked at where he had written and where he had scratched out Vahamya. Then Vahamya had appeared again. So Krishna and Balaram, they hold, well, Krishna, Balaram of course is there. Krishna holds this sweetness of his relationship. He's not asking for perfection, right? So where does Mahamaya come? Because when the person is lacking, right? But he's saying that he's glorifying them as one who are dear to him. So he's not asking for perfection. In fact, perfection is the sign of impersonalism. So when even when we say we want to become perfect, this, that, whatever, it's not practical. Perfection is a sign of impersonalism. Krishna is recognizing the imperfection and happily accepting the impersonalism. So verse 25 is a summary of the principle that Krishna says that depending on where they are situated in goodness, passion, and ignorance, they have a different destination. But he says, my devotees have me as the destination, right? So it kind of summarizes what he has said. Now, Krishna enters into the part that is dear to him, which he talks about the glories of Bhakti. This is Madhurya Gyan, right? Speaks very, very wonderful verses. So he has indicated the mood of his devotees. He has indicated the activities of the devotees. How does one become a devotee? So Krishna says, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam. Yome Bhakti Prayashati Tadam Bhaktya Uparatam Ashnami Pritatmana. That if one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. Now the acharyas say, we comment two things on this verse. Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, they are singular. It's not Patrani, Pushpani, Phalani. So Krishna is saying one leaf, one flower, one fruit, right? So it's singular. Second, the way the sentence is constructed, it does not, Krishna is not saying, give me Patram and Pushpam and Phalam and Toyam. He's saying Patram or Pushpam. Any one of these four is sufficient. Prabhupada says, if one has nothing, offer water. Water is easily available, right? So if the first line is so optional, what is it that is actually then going to attract the attention of Krishna? So that he repeats 3 times for emphasis. So he says, Mi Bhaktya, which means with devotion. Aham Bhaktya Upaharatam, with devotion. Paryatmana, with love, right? So the main ingredients is not the Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. The main ingredients is the love and devotion of the offering, right? So now you see how Krishna is making himself vulnerable. He's saying, all that I'm hungry for is your love, right? So somebody goes to another person and says that all that I need is your love. Nothing else I need. That person has completely opened his heart, has become completely under the control of the other person, because it is now the other person's prerogative to give love or withhold love. Because the love is with the other person, you cannot snatch it. And the first person is saying that I only need love from you, nothing else. So now the first person has demonstrated his complete dependence on the other person. That if you show me love, I will be happy. If you do not show me love, I will not be happy. Now Krishna cannot be unhappy, but in this particular relationship, Krishna is unhappy. It's said that when the jiva falls, then that service that the jiva performs stops, and Krishna misses that jiva. And Krishna says, I will accept it. What does it mean? Voluntarily he's saying, I will accept it. No compulsion on any part, right? I will happily accept it. You give me so little bit of love, I will happily accept it. Right? So there is this display of the rawest emotions from the part of Krishna. Next verse, Yat Karoshi Yad, another famous verse, Yat Karoshi Yad Snasi Yad Johoshi Dadashida, Yat Tapasya Kontaya Tat Kurushva Mata. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, whatever austerities you perform, do that as an offering to me. So let me ask you a question over here. Quick question, because I may be running out of time. Which of these two verses describe a higher stage of relationship with Krishna? Venugopal Prabhu?
The 26 Prabhu, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam.
Because
here is emphasizing what he's really looking for is the devotion, the love. While in 27, it's more if that is not possible fully, an alternate is presented.
Okay, very close. So I'll just elaborate on that answer. So you're right, Prabhu. 26 does represent an higher, even though if you were to read it superficially, 27 seems higher, because Yat Karoshi Yad Asnasi, there he is saying Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, right? Just a leaf and flower. Here he's saying whatever you do, that whatever you eat. So it seems to indicate a greater level of submission. Not just leaf and flower, whatever you do, 24/7, you should offer to me, whatever austerities you do. But the difference between 26 and 27 is that in 26, Krishna says that I will accept. So he's saying, do it for me. In 27, Krishna is saying, whatever you do. So the focus in 27 is you. The focus in 26 is I. Right? And when Krishna is at the center, that is pure devotional service. 27 is an example of karma mishra bhakti. So people in this stage, they do work according to their nature, but then they will offer the results to Krishna. Right? So that is essentially karma mishra bhakti. 26 is shuddha bhakti. That even though they are offering little bit, but they are offering it with all the love. They're only doing it because Krishna is asking them to do, right? And in verse 28, he says, what is the result of this? That you will be freed from the bondage to work, and its auspicious and inauspicious results, right? So this is Krishna's glorification. Now Krishna speaks about another confusing aspect of Krishna's relationship with the material world. Verse 29, another famous verse, Samom Sarvbhuteshu, Na me dveshasti na priya, ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya, mai tuteshu chapya. Right? So first two sentences in the verse, Krishna says, I envy no one. I'm partial to no one. And then he says that ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya, mai tuteshu chapya. That those who render devotion to me, that person is my friend and I am a friend to him, right? So this is the demonstration of Krishna's partiality and impartiality. The first two lines of the verse are Krishna in the form of Paramatma, completely neutral, simply giving what the jiva desires and deserves, right? So there's no partiality. The second two line is about Krishna being partial to his devotees. Now, one might say that this impinges on the Achintya Bheda Bhed Tattva, which was based on Krishna's neutrality. Like Krishna said, right, I am neutral. And here he's saying I'm not neutral. So does this impinge on that tattva? No, for two reasons. One, we have already established that the Achintya Bheda Bhed tattva is only for Krishna's external energy. The devotees act under Krishna's internal energy. And for those who are not completely under Krishna's internal energy, practicing devotees, aspiring devotees, Krishna is still impartial in his partiality, which means that his impartiality, his partiality is not whimsical. But the way that he is partial is the same for everyone. There is no distinction in his partiality. So in Ramayana, there is this pastime that when Vibhishan, he came to take shelter of Lord Ram, then Lord Ram immediately, he took some dust from the ground, did a tilak on Vibhishan and glorified him, said, Lankapati ki jai. So then Sugriv said that, how can you call him Lankapati? We haven't even started the battle with Ravan. What if we are not able to defeat Ravan? And you have said Lankapati, which means he is the king of Lanka, and your words are always true. What will you do? Lord Ram said, no problem. If I am not able to give him Lanka, I will make him the king of Ayodhya. So then they said, but Bharat is ruling Ayodhya. What if he does not agree to give up the throne? Lord Ram says, no problem. If Bharat refuses to give Ayodhya, I will give him Vaikuntha. So Sugriv says, but you are ruling Vaikuntha. If you give him Vaikuntha, what will you do? Lord Ram says, I will serve him and all the other devotees. So this is an example of being impartially partial. So Vibhishan is a devotee, Bharat is a devotee, the residents of Vaikuntha are a devotee. Lord Ram is not cheating anybody. He is partial to all of them in an impartial way. How partial? One might ask Krishna. So Krishna says, Api che sudaracharo bhajante ma ananyabhat sadhureva samantavya samyak vyavasito hisa. That I am so partial that even if he commits the most abominable action, he should be considered to be properly situated. So, sudurachara. So, achar means good conduct, durachar means bad conduct, sudurachar means very, very bad conduct. Right? Vajante mam ananyabhat. If he is my devotee, then sadhu revasa mantavya. So eva means only. So Krishna is cautioning. Don't consider this person as anything else other than sadhu. Don't say that this person is a fallen sadhu, or this person is an ex-sadhu, or this person is a sadhu and a criminal. Sadhu eva, only sadhu. Mantavya is means that it's an assertive instruction. In Sanskrit, assertion means that there is no room for rigor. So he's saying you respect him in all circumstances. Samyak vivasato hisa, right? Because he is properly situated in his determination. What is the proper situated? As the devotee of Krishna. Now somebody can ask that why would a devotee of Krishna be sudurachara? So Krishna says that apichet. Apichet is it basically makes this it creates a hypothesis, right? It's like you go to somebody and say that, will you do this thing? Person says no. Then you say, I'll give you $10. Will you do it? Say no. Say, I'll give you $100. Will you do it? So he said, even if you give me $1 million, I will not do it. Right? Now the person knows you don't have $1 million, but he's saying that to create an hypothesis that under no circumstances I would do this. So the hypothesis over here is that even somehow if my devotee becomes a Sudurachara, Sadhureva Mantavya. So it's not that Krishna is saying that my devotees can become Sudurachara, but the power of devotion is so strong that even if they become Sudurachara, they should still be Sadhureva Sa Mantavya. And then Krishna says, why? Kshiparam bhavati dharmatma shashvak shantam nigacchati kaunteya pratijani name bhaktya pranashati. Words that gives a lot of solace to the devotees, that he quickly attains righteous, he becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotees never perish. So the point that Krishna is making that the power of devotion far, far exceeds the power of sinful activities. Because by devotion, one attracts the partiality of Krishna. And when Krishna is there, then the laws of karma do not apply. Krishna takes control of the person's future and past activities. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Krishna is asking Arjun, so he says, Kaunteya pratijani, you declare it. So one may say, why is Krishna not declaring it? After all, he's God. Why is he asking Arjun to declare? So Vishwanath Chakravarti says, because Krishna breaks his promises once in a while. He breaks the promises for the benefit of his devotees. Right? Bhishma said, Krishna said that I will never pick up any weapons in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And when Bhishma took a vow, I will make Krishna pick up the weapon, Krishna picked up the weapon. He broke his own vow. So for the pleasure of his devotees, Krishna breaks his vows. But when his devotee makes a vow, he never breaks it. So that's why he's asking for Arjun to say that. If you say that, then that becomes, I become bound by your statement. And then Krishna makes this point that even if one is of low birth, whether the person is born as a Vaishya or a Shudra or a woman, even then the process of bhakti will equally elevate them. Right? So lower birth is generally considered to be a result of past sinful activities. So Krishna is saying that bhakti is so powerful, not only will it protect you against future sinful activities, it will also protect you against past sinful activities. Right? And Radhanath Maharaj has a good explanation on the verse that especially when Krishna says Triyo Vaishyas Tatha Shudras, because the opportunity for spirituality is not that much available to them at that time. Right? Srila Prabhupada once said in Mayapur that he said, I can tell you one reason why ISKCON will never fail and why other mathas have failed. And the devotees were like all ears. What's the big secret? And Krishna says, because, I'm not Krishna, sorry, Prabhupada says that because I have a secret weapon. And my secret weapon is the Matajis in the movement. That they will be the strength of the movement. Radhanath Maharaj, he was half joking, maybe not. He once says that by nature, men are crooked, and by nature, women are simple-hearted. He was giving a lecture somewhere in Haryana, I think, and he came to the pandal. There were no men there, only women. He said, where are the men? He said, there's a cricket match going on. They're all watching cricket match. And then suddenly there was a lot of firecrackers and all that. It was against India, Pakistan. They said, oh, okay, it looks like India has won. And then suddenly all the men came back, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But the women were there, sitting right up front. So Maharaj makes this point that by heart they are simple, so they will accept the words of the scriptures. So moving on to the last. The last verse. So this verse is considered to be the essence of the Gita. Manmanabhav madhakto madhyajimam namaskaru maam evashyasi yuktvevyam atmanam mat parayanam. Right. So this verse, it captures the essence of Gita. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. This is the only verse that appears twice in the Gita. It appears in 934, appears in 1865. The first 2.5 lines are the same. The 1.5 line is a little different, but the meaning of the verse is the same. So many times we say 1866 Sarvadharma Pratyajaya, but that is the conclusion of the Gita. The essence of the Gita is this verse, where Krishna gives 4 confidential instructions. Always think of him, become his devotee, worship him, and offer obeisances to him. And when we do the nectar devotion, we will see how this verse translates to Rupa Goswami's definition of pure devotional service. So the essence of the Bhagavad Gita is pure devotional service, which is coming through this verse. And that is the last slide. And unfortunately, I did not keep good track of time, but I do want to give a few minutes for, maybe I'll give 5 minutes for question and answers, but I will take up question and answers on this, or maybe let me do this. Let me not do question and answers. I do want to leave you with 2 things. Preparation for next class. So there are the 4 groups. If each one of you could present one of the verses of the Chaturshloki. So group 1 does 10.8, group 2 does 10.9, group 3 does 10.10, group 4 does 10.11. And I would ask you to go a little deep into the verse and give a presentation. What is it that Krishna, why is it Chaturshloki? Why is it the essence of the Gita? What is the philosophical point that is being made over here? And then after that, I'll go through the summation of the 10th chapter. And before that, I can, if you can take time to digest. This is a critical chapter, a lot of philosophy presented over here. Take some time to digest it. Write down any questions that you want, and we'll begin the session with question and answers. Go through the 4 presentations of the Chaturshloki, and then after that, if time permits, I'll begin the summation of the 10th chapter. Okay. Second point is that I have received the papers from those who have attempted the test. As of now, I have graded all of them and returned them. If for some reason I have missed any paper, please let me know, and or resend to me. But as far as I know, all the question papers that I have got, I have graded them and returned them. Also want to make this point that at this point, I think it's half and half. Half of you have attempted the questions, half of you have not. So those who have not, kindly do so. We are just a few weeks away from finishing the 2nd module, and it will become progressively more difficult to catch up. Okay, very good. So let me end over here. And once again, I ask you forgiveness for taking more time. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। गौर प्रेमानंद।
हरि हरि